everyone to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. If this is your very first time to listen to my podcast or to visit, pull up a chair and enjoy the conversation, unless, of course, you're driving. Then your hands, 9 and 3, eyes straight ahead. If this is your 45th episode, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is because of loyal listeners like you that our podcast has been so widely received. So thank you. Now, you guys know the drill. You know how social media works. Every time you like, love, comment, and share, you are telling the powers that be that you like this, and they like me. So that's the way that you support the podcast. Be sure to like, love, comment, and share. If you're in charge of a church group, a youth group, or a business group, feel free to share this episode to whoever it may apply, and I would greatly appreciate it. Now, if you're brand new, comment and let me know where you're from, because I want to get to know you better. Well, our podcast is built on a mantra that built my business for 42 years on 2 continents. It's on that 7-foot piece of art back behind my shoulder, and you guys know it very, very well. So let's say it together. I am where I am by the choices I've made, or I've allowed others to make for me. Take a deep cleansing breath, because I kind of smacked you. If we woke up this morning and we didn't love our life, look in the mirror. Don't blame your spouse. You married them. Don't blame your children. Children are not born to fulfill you. And don't blame your boss. You choose to go there. If we want a different life, a more fulfilled, a more intentional life, then we simply have to make different choices. And sometimes that requires us putting ourselves in the space of others or listening to things that help us make those better choices. And that is my intention, obviously, with this podcast. Now, God has gifted you 168 hours this week, and it's just like money. You get to spend it any way that you want. And so I really value the fact that you have chosen to give me a few minutes of your time. So thank you so very, very much. Well, before we get started, I want to tell you how to find my podcast in the future. First of all, you can find me on Facebook, Linda Toupin, Common Sense Choices, on YouTube, Linda Toupin, Common Sense Choices, on Apple, on Spotify. But the very best way, say it with me, the very best way is to sign up for my concierge service. It's absolutely free of charge, and I will think about you every time I release an episode, and I'll send it to you. It's that simple. So all you have to do is head on over to lindatoupin.com. That's T as in Tom, O-U, P as in Peter, I-N. I've only said that 5 million times in my life. lindatoupin.com. Now, if you're on your phone, the sign up button is in the upper left-hand corner. If you're on a device like a tablet, a computer, or a laptop, it's going to be on the upper right-hand side. Now, it is a 2-step system, you guys. It's this high security stuff that we're dealing with these days. And so I'll send you an email that says, are you sure? And you have to hit confirm in order to get that concierge service and to get every episode emailed to you. You will get emails from me, and you will get text directly from me. So that is the very best way. Now, while you're over there, check out some of our other services under the brand Common Sense Choices. That's how you financially support the podcast. So we have our mantra on various things over there that you can put in your home, classroom, office. And our most popular one is an 8x8 canvas print with our mantra on it. Now you can put this on those little stands, that you get at Target or Hobby Lobby, or maybe your teenager's bedroom. That would be a good place. In the spring, we have brand new canvas cosmetic bags choices. And my favorite, honestly, is our bank bags and accessory bags. I don't know about y'all, but when I travel, I've got a phone charger and a computer charger. And sometimes I travel with my little tiny Bluetooth speaker, and I have my earbuds. And so I need to put those in something. And so these are perfect for that. These are bank bags that can be used as accessories. In the spring, we have them in a light pink, salmon, and a navy. Check those all out. And we also have our mantra on no-show socks. So when you put your feet up, it says, I make wise choices. All right. So when you order, everything will come to you in a beautiful organza bag. This is an order I just packaged up today, so I thought I would show that to you. And so if you're gifting it to several people, if you order several things, just let me know in the comment section, and I'll put an organza bag for every item. And we also have, this person ordered our note cards. So you get 25 or 50 of those that have the mantra on it. You get a personal handwritten note from me. And the coolest thing is you get a little story of how that mantra came to be. All right. I am where I am by the choices I've made or I've allowed others to make for me. So check it all out. Well, one of my newest things, and you'll check it out, it'll come up on the screen right now, is something called common sense advice. A lot of people just need someone to listen to them. And it doesn't matter whether it's business or just personal, just someone to kind of be in your corner and be your cheerleader, an outside observer to say, wow, let's take a look at some situations in your life and I'll give you some advice. I have a lot of common sense. Sometimes we take these things that happen to us and we make them a little bit more complicated than they need to be. And I'm really good at getting it right down to the bottom line really fast. And so you can actually put me in your employment for 30 days. So we meet for an hour on a Zoom so I get to know you a little bit better. And then some people love me to do touch points with them during the month, maybe once a week. And that would just be through an app called Voxer. Some people like an email checklist, like these are the things I recommend that you focus on. And then the next time we meet, we kind of go back over that. There's no contract. Most people meet with me once a month, some people every other month, and some people it's one and done. So it's whatever it works the best for you. So check it out under the heading coaching. It's called Common Sense Advice. And maybe we'll get to know each other a little bit better. Anyway, all right. Well, before I introduce our guest speaker today, let me kind of catch you up. Most of you know that I'm very fortunate that my parents are still with me. They are in their 90s and up until Thanksgiving, well, actually even today, it's April 2024, I'm filming this, that they still live on their own. Now, it got a little dicey at Thanksgiving with a fall my mom had. And so all of a sudden, I was thrown into a world that I thought I was prepared for. And I wasn't prepared for because prior to last fall, I had actually done three podcasts on this topic of trust and wills and probates and power of attorneys. And that is episode, let me catch you up, number 26. I brought in Katie Fennell, who is an elder care lawyer that me and my family had hired. And she coached us on that real important thing called the 5-year look back, which if you don't know what that means, it will change your life at the end of your life or your parents' life. So it's a very important topic. And we got a lot of great legal advice from Katie. So we did a podcast. Episode number 27 is I brought two people to you, had very different stories. Jennifer Mullen's father was tragically murdered. He had no end of life planning. And then the nightmare she had to live through because there was no end of life planning. And then you met Rachel Bullock, who her mom was diagnosed with ALS. And so her mom obviously had time to make those real important decisions that make it easier on family. Episode 28, you met Kathy Goff Brummett, my friend in Oxford, Mississippi, who works with a funeral home. And she did an incredible job on the funeral home experience and pre-planning your funeral. Actually, my mom, after watching that a year and a half ago, went down and planned the funerals for her and dad. And what a blessing that will be to me and my brothers one day. And then all this stuff happened with my mom. And I thought, whoo, okay, I wasn't nearly as prepared as I thought because I got thrown into a world of Medicare, Medicaid, insurances, all these hoops that you have to jump through. And then it depends on what state you live in and what area of the state you live in. And then the rules change. And then you have to meet this qualification and that qualification. And it was like, OMG. So I brought back in episode 43, Katie Fennell. And we looked at Medicare, Medicaid, the 5-year look back, and what's called the spin down. And again, if you have no idea what those words mean, please, I beg you to save you and your family an enormous amount of grief in the future. Please listen to that episode. And then last episode was 44, and you got to meet beautiful Heidi Ray. She is a hospice bereavement coordinator, and she acquainted us with hospice. And it was a great episode because I didn't know a lot about hospice, and she educated us on the wealth of resources. Honestly, I had no idea that hospice provided. Well, because I know Heidi, she shared with me, and I knew that her husband, Jason, was a chaplain with hospice, how powerful it would be to follow up her episode by bringing him on. And that is who you're going to meet here in just a moment. Jason is going to educate us on a part of that process that Heidi barely touched on. And I can hardly wait because, as I told him a few minutes ago, as we were preparing to record, this is an easy interview because I know nothing. And so it'll be a great group of questions. But before I bring him on, I want to introduce him to you. He has been married to Heidi, who you met last week, for 28 years. And they have three, I think I find this interesting, Jason, three different boys. And I think all parents would probably put the word different in front of their children's names because it is amazing how they can come from the same two people and be so different. Aiden is 23 and he's a caddy at Valhalla Golf Course. Woo! My eyebrows raised. I thought, well, don't get no better than that. Caden is 20. He's a musician and head audio engineer at Holiday World and the worship leader at church and a coffee connoisseur. Tate, their youngest, is 16. He's a sophomore, a grease monkey, and loves all things cars. So you can see you got three completely different boys there. Jason has 3 degrees. One is from the Cincinnati Christian University, where he has a BS in biblical studies. He also has a BS in leadership and ministry, and then he has a BS in management and ethics. He has been in ministry for almost 28 years, with 23 of those years mostly being involved with students, and 5 years as a senior minister. He's also been a chaplain for the hospice organization for 5+ years as well. His life mission, and this is so powerful, I want you to truly absorb these words, has been helping people take their next step toward Jesus. And in hospice, it has become helping people take their last step toward Jesus. I don't know about you, but I got cold chills. All right, let me bring him on. Give me just a second and let's unmute there, Jason. How are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much. I know how busy you are and what a busy life you and your family have. And for you to take this time out for my audience I'm so grateful.
Oh no, that's more than happy to do it.
Well, my audience definitely, I think, will be enlightened, mainly because I will be greatly enlightened by everything that you said today. But when you were a little boy and you were growing up, Jason, did you have any idea at that time this is going to be your life? Because that's impressive.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I guess I had the same dreams as every other little kid, as a fireman, a policeman, or whatever. But never being in ministry was never that until my senior year of high school. And that's when it all changed, when our youth pastor came in and he took us to a conference. And at that conference, I finally gave my life to the Lord. And I told God, I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it full time. And so that's what it's been ever since.
That's oh, I already have cold chills twice now. Once was just introducing you and once was just then. And so how was, okay, the last 5 years, only the last 5 years has been with hospice. So how did that kind of segue into hospice? What was that journey like?
Yeah, we were coming out of a ministry and we just felt like we needed a break from church ministry, but I didn't want to step away from ministry in general. And so we had a friend of ours at our last church that we were at that had a position open, and she was telling me about it. And she tried to tell me about it about 10 years ago. And I told her, you're crazy. I said, I don't want to do this. That's just not my cup of tea. I don't want to deal with death and dying. You know, it's just too morbid for me. But whenever it came up to the point where I was kind of looking for something different, she reached out again. And so that's kind of how I came on board with hospice, was after talking with her and then applying there where I'm at.
Well, because I mean, your specialty has obviously been with students.
Students, correct.
So you're on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's been very different, but it's been actually an easy transition. I grew up constantly visiting with some elderly people that were really good friends with my parents. I had an aunt who lived 40+ years in a nursing home.
What?
Yeah,
40 years?
40 plus years. She was blind, and her parents couldn't take care of her because of the age and their farm and everything. And so I grew up visiting her down in the deep south of Arkansas. And so I've been around it quite a bit my entire life. And so it was an easy transition.
That in itself is an amazing story that we don't have time to go down. Now, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine what that would look like for 40 years. But
Yeah.
so, um, what do you think was the hardest part about that transition for you?
Being around the death part of it. I knew that I was going to have to be around part of it at first. I have a lot of our nurses that they could tell you stories upon stories about how much I hated being around death and how much they love to make fun of me about it. And they could tell you different stories that I walked in on a patient and had no idea they had passed, and was sitting there talking and waiting for the nurse to get there. And the nurse shows up and says, he's gone. And I had no idea at that time. And so it was just, that's been the hardest part, is just being around that.
Mhm.
And the unfortunate part of being around it so much is that I've become a little numb to it.
Well,
And
I
so,
would I told Heidi when I talked to her, I don't know if we had this conversation on screen or off screen, but it's like a policeman, they kind of see the worst part of humanity and they have to kind of get numb to it, I would think. Uh, and I would think, anyone who is working with the elderly, especially in hospice, you have to kind of get a little numb.
yeah, you do. And unfortunately, though, we don't always get to work with the elderly. We get to work with those who have had to come on hospice in their 20s.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah, due to just different circumstances. And so we've had some young ones on there before. We don't deal with pediatrics. I don't know if I can handle that one.
Yeah.
But if you're 18 or older, we will deal with a patient that way. And so, but yeah, you do have to kind of become numb to it, because my emotions would get the better part of me at the very beginning. I wouldn't even know the patient all that well, and I'm sitting there crying right along with the family, because I mean they just lost a loved one. And I just, I can only imagine the hardest patients for me to deal with are those patients with Parkinson's disease.
Really?
And that's because my dad has Parkinson's, and I know what's coming. And so that's the hardest part for me to deal with.
So, what exactly, define for my audience the job of the chaplain? What's
Yeah.
the job of the chaplain?
My job is to come in and support whatever faith background that the patient has. I live in a heavily Catholic community. I'm a Protestant, um, but they still allow me to come in and still allow me just to be around them. I don't come in and preach to them. I don't come in and try to get them to change their faith. I have to do a lot of research and a lot of things to look up about their faith. And so I can be there to support them in however I can. I'm not there to take over their pastor's position. I'm there just to add an extra support to what they do. And so, and a lot of times we will have some of those people who want to have those deathbed confessions, and have never truly been saved. And I mean, I've baptized people in nursing homes, and just because that's been their wish. And so it's been pretty cool.
So that's fascinating, because I would think, yeah, I mean, I would have not even thought that you're dealing with every type of religion. Of course, in Western Indiana, there might not be that much diversity,
Correct.
as far as Muslim or Hindu. I mean, I'm just
Correct.
speculating, but your job is just to add another voice and another person.
Correct. Correct. And just to be a support of just, sometimes I get people that say I'm not religious, and I'll tell them, well, I'm not religious either. So it means we're going to get along. And they'll tell me, what do you mean you're not religious? I said, in my opinion, and I hope this isn't offensive, but in my opinion, I think all religion is not man-made, is man-made and not God-made.
Right.
And so I think a lot of religions are going to end up finding their way to hell. And if you don't have that relationship with Jesus, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, so your job is just to be that extra voice, that extra comfort. How often do you typically see patients? Once, because Heidi educated us that hospice, quote quote, is usually typically for those last 6 months. She
Correct.
educated us that some people will actually go out of hospice and come back, but
Correct.
it's typically the last 6 months. So how often do you actually see that patient?
It all depends on the patient and what they want their frequency to be. And at very minimum, I'm there once a month. A lot of times I'm there twice a month. I have a particularly pretty young patient right now that I'm seeing weekly. But when it gets down to the latter part of the last, week or so of their life, I'm there 2 to 3 times a week,
Right.
just as an added support there.
Well, Heidi indicated inside the world that you live in is that there are different things that you expect and the family expect in the last few months, the last few weeks, the last few days, the last few hours, and the last few minutes. And
Correct.
I am very fascinated by that. And I'm sure
Yeah.
my audience would love for you to elaborate on that.
Sure, sure. I'm going to look off screen just a little bit at some of
That's
my
okay.
notes. But you know, everybody needs help dying. We needed help coming into this world, and people need help dying as well. And so it's the dying process actually starts a lot sooner than when the patient actually passes. We look at things, especially from like 1 to 3 months out. You can start seeing communicating that they're communicating less, that they are withdrawn from people, they're withdrawn from activities, that they're eating less, that they're drinking less, that they're sleeping more. Those are some things that we notice between a month to 3 months out. And I know some people are like, man, I mean, I'm experiencing some of that now. I'm communicating less. I am, and this is just this isn't this isn't a blueprint of exactly what's going to happen for every patient.
Right.
This is just kind of a guide, the stuff that we've noticed that we can kind of give some help with on that. So that 1 to 3 month period is when you can really start seeing, okay, there's some things that are changing a little bit here.
Do
And
you
so
think that's the body's natural reaction to helping the process along in some
I
way?
do, I do. Half the battle with being a hospice patient is your mind, and that's just half the battle with anything is your mind. If you get a terminal diagnosis and there's nothing there that you can to do to make it better. I mean, you kind of go home and almost give up on life.
Right, right,
And so, yeah, I do think it's your body's natural, defense, to start to shut down.
right.
Yeah,
I mean, because you hear stories, and I'm sure you've seen stories, and I've only heard stories, where it's like you will yourself to death, to die. Your spouse you've been with for 50, 60, 70 years, they pass, and it's like, I have no desire to live. So there's almost a will to not live.
yes, correct, correct. Yeah. So, that's one of the things that I ask our patients is, how do you want me to be praying for you? Because I want to come into an agreement with them. And if they want to pray that God will take them now or as soon as possible, even though that's hard for the family to hear,
Right,
that's what the patient's dying wish is. And so that's what I'm going to be praying for.
right.
And so, it's very, yeah, it becomes very difficult, especially for the family to be sitting around and hearing some of these conversations,
Well,
that have taken
but
place.
I mean, this is why I wanted you on here because, and it's why I've done so many episodes on this because you can't for the rest of your life put your head in the sand. We're all
No,
going to be there. And
right,
the more that you know, the more prepared you are, the less frightening it is.
right,
It's
right,
like childbirth. The more you know, the less frightened you are. And the same process has to be with death. It's like the more you know what you're explaining to me right now, the more it's like, okay, I can expect this. Then it's
right,
not as frightening.
right, right. Like I told you earlier, that Parkinson's patients are my hardest, and my boss had to talk me off a couple of ledges a couple of times from quitting just because I couldn't do it. And she turned it around and said, "But at least you know what's coming, and at least you can prepare yourself for better, and also to know that my dad may not go through those exact same things that my current patients go through."
Right.
So the education part is very important on that.
Yes, I would think so. So 1 to 3 months, less food, less drink, more sleeping, less
Yeah.
communicating. Those are all signs.
Right, and then you jump into the 1 to 2 week area, and so during that time is You see increased confusion and some disorientation that's going on within your loved one. They start seeing or talking to people who aren't there. And that's something that's real. That's something that's real. And I do believe that patients do see people. They start to have some physical changes with their pulse, with their blood pressure, with their skin color, with their breathing. They start having some different physical changes like that. They have changes in their bodies. The temperature either goes hot or cold during that time. They are not eating. They're taking little to no liquids in at all. Less urine outputs, that kind of thing is what starts to happen there. One of the biggest battles that we come up against is people wanting to force feed
Yeah.
the patients.
Yeah.
And that is another defense mechanism, that your body's just shutting down. You're just not hungry anymore.
Right.
You're just not thirsty anymore.
Right.
And so when you get down to that 1 to 2 week mark, that's a really tough time. It's a really tough time because it feels as a loved one that you're giving up on your loved one. That's the patient that's passing.
So the people they're having a conversation with, they believe them to be in the room with them.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. They believe they'll tell us that they're, "Well, who's that man standing at the door? Who's that man sitting on the edge of my bed? Or who's that person there over there?" Or they'll say they saw a loved one, and they will describe them. And the cool thing is that sometimes they'll describe them as a younger version of them. And so it just kind of makes you wonder what heaven's going to be like,
So
when we
I
start
am
getting to heaven.
assuming these are people who have already passed.
Correct. Correct.
Because that is interesting. I would be very curious how many times it is the younger version of someone who had passed. Because I've always believed like there is this optimum time in a human's life that you go to. And it probably is different for everything. And this is my speculation. This is all my, in my head.
Good.
But, in the few experiences I've had in my own dreams, that place that you dream between sleep and awake, I've had experiences where I could see people in my dream that was either going to pass or had passed, but they weren't how they were at the end. They
Yeah.
were at the optimum teenage 20s, 30s when they were at their best, their peak. And I've
Right.
seen it and it's like, wow. Only it's that on steroids. It's not like what we know. It's like that on steroids. It's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. It's really cool to see that, and some family members ask, well, how can they see somebody younger? And I just remind them what scripture says about how we're going to get a brand new heavenly body and we receive our complete and full healing at that time. And, at that moment is whenever, I believe that, like you said, when your body is at the optimum, at some point in time. I mean, that's what you're looking at.
Well, wow. And for you to witness that has to be such an affirmation of your own faith.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it is. It is. And it brings comfort too. It brings comfort to me, especially if I have a patient that I don't know for sure if they have really made peace with the Lord.
Mhm.
And we've had some, I mean, I've had two that I can recall, very extreme deathbed confessions. And as soon as they've been able to get it off their chest, they passed.
That's amazing.
It's
I mean, that is the part of your job that I would find absolutely fascinating because you're seeing something that we only watch in the movies or we read in books. And for you
right,
to witness it has to have an emotional effect like times a million.
right, right. Watching them take that last breath is um is a very surreal, special moment. And I know that kind of sounds kind of weird, but it's something unlike anything I've ever experienced before, and especially if I know, I have a prayer that I kind of say with the patients and their families, and I talk about how when God went to prepare that place for us, and He'll come back to receive us, that the time that we take our last breath here on earth, our next is in His presence, with His arms wide open, saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Welcome home." And at that moment is when they receive that complete and full healing and that brand new heavenly body. And I truly believe that God takes them by that hand, leads them across that threshold onto those streets of gold. and walks into that forever home that he has been preparing for them. And
Well,
so,
I mean, because I believe most people of faith believe it is a door. It's just a door that you're walking through.
yeah,
You know.
yeah,
So,
I agree.
so that's the last couple of weeks. So, what
Right.
about that last few days or hours?
Yeah, the days and hours, they're mostly sleeping. Hearing is the last sense to go. And so we always encourage people to continue to talk with the patient, to continue to have family conversations around the patient, tell stories around the patient, because we don't know when the hearing goes. We just know it's the last sense to go.
Ah,
Be very careful in watching their eyebrows, because they can respond to you that way, or they can respond by just squeezing your hand, but they may not be able to verbally respond to you. Um, Sometimes they get these surges of energy and they become restless, sometimes. And that's when sometimes the medication needs to start, a little bit more, just to get him to calm down, because when a body is not calm, it cannot pass. And so
interesting.
yeah, it's difficult sometimes to watch that. They start having a difficult time swallowing, during those last days and hours. Their skin starts to what we call model. And the best way I can describe modeling is that your hands, your feet starts there kind of, and it'll go up your legs, down your arms, and it kind of looks like marble, on your skin. You can kind of see it starting that way.
Interesting.
Um, Changes in their breathing. We've heard of the death rattle. That's something that our nurses, have been, almost experts at getting not to happen, because that really freaks people out
Yeah.
whenever you start hearing that. It's horrible for us. The patient doesn't realize anything's going on and doesn't know, and it's not affecting them at all. But it's
Right.
horrible for us to have to hear that. They start to get a decreased blood pressure, the weak pulse they start to get. And of course, they continue to decrease any kind of output they may have from their body at that time as well. And so it's difficult sometimes to watch that restlessness, and then you're constantly just sitting there and you're watching their chest,
Right.
because apnea starts to set in. And I mean, I've had patients that have had apnea for up to 2 minutes before they've taken a breath again.
Gracious.
And so it's kind of difficult to watch, but it's something that everybody ends up going through
Right.
with that. So, and then you get down to the final minutes. And during that time is when you start getting super shallow breaths. That's why I said you're starting to watch them a little bit more, a lot more pausing, happens during that time. Their mouth is kind of open during that time. It's not a pretty picture. It's
Right.
not a pretty picture at all.
Right.
Um, but that is something that, you can continue just to love on your special loved one during that time. And our nurses are really good about getting people in and around the bed to say, "Hey, this is it. So you need to say your final goodbye."
Wow. Wow. So Heidi really educated us on the process. I had no idea the services after someone passes. That was wonderful. So, how often, Jason, are you present at the moment of death?
It depends on how quick I can get there. It depends on if the nurses can get a hold of me. Sometimes I walk in on it and I'm the one that has to call the nurse. It really varies on where we're at with our territory. We cover such a wide, territory. Sometimes it's very difficult for me to get there. At the least, I get there afterwards,
Right.
to help with the family and just to talk with them a little bit and have a prayer with them and that kind of thing, and bring some comfort to them in that way.
Right.
So
Right. And then what does that look like as far as your role once, I guess, the Undertaker or coroner, what does that look like in the following days or weeks?
yeah, yeah. So I think we do something really cool, and it's really tailored towards our hospice, especially for our veterans. And so, a lot of times when the funeral home comes to pick up the patient, they will, drape them with a blanket or put them, I hate saying it like this, but put them in a bag.
Mhm.
What we do for our veterans is that we all carry flags, and we cover them with an American flag, and we play taps as they're leaving the home or leaving the facility. And you talking about an emotional moment. That is very tough to be a part of, but it's so just awesome to be a part of as well.
Honoring.
Yeah, very much so.
You're
Very
honoring
much so.
that
Yeah,
person.
very much so.
Wow.
So, but during that time, I mean, we stay until the funeral home will be there. We will give the patient, the patient's family as much time as they need. We've had to wait 3 and 4 hours sometimes because somebody's driving down from Indianapolis or driving in from Lexington or someplace else, and so we've had to wait quite a long time sometimes. But we're there with them. We don't leave their side. We're there to provide the support for them, just to do whatever we can for them during that time. Sometimes we just kind of take a back seat and just sit over and listen until it's time for them, until they have a question or whatever. So we're there though until the funeral home gets there. Our nurses are the ones who have to pronounce and are the ones that have to, call the coroner's office and um, make all those kind of phone calls to the doctors and that kind of thing as well. So
Wow. That's just so beautiful what you provide and what you would you say that the average person when they pass does have family with them? What's that percentage ratio?
I don't know the exact percentage ratio on that, but I would say a majority of them do. The only times that sometimes where we run into a problem with that is that if they're in a nursing home and they may pass at 3:30 in the morning
Yeah.
or 4 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
our nurses try to do the best that we possibly can and just saying, hey, tonight could be the night. And then a lot of families, they do stay.
Right.
They will stay the night and stuff, but our nurses don't have a magic 8 ball and they can't, they're not God, so they can't say, oh, it's going to happen during this time.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I would say a majority of our patients have family with them.
What percentage would you say pass at home versus a hospital on a nursing home situation?
My caseload, I have about a 60-40 split. I got about 60% of my patients in the nursing home, and about 40% of my patients are at home. I don't know how that is with every hospice or with every. I don't even know what that is with my other chaplains right now, what their ratios are or anything like that. But that's about what I'm at right now.
Right.
So I'm at about a 60-40 split.
Do you see a difference in that whole experience, one versus the other, or does it really matter?
No, you see a difference in it. You see a difference in it being, in a facility. The loved ones aren't there all the time.
Right.
They try to be there as much as they possibly can, but they're not there all the time. To where if they're at home, there's
Right.
usually either a loved one there or a paid caregiver who is there giving intense um, uh, attention to them.
Right.
Um, so, yeah, as you know, with nursing homes, it's they do the best they can. We have a lot of good nursing homes in our area that do a very good job in taking care, and they know whenever they're on hospice, they know that they have another set of eyes in there,
Right.
and they'll keep an eye on them as well. So yeah,
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. So what what would you well, I want to ask you some stories because I'm sure you have some beautiful stories of passing, but I'll save that for the end.
okay,
Uh, what advice would you give my audience with regard to this whole? I mean, if you could say, I wish you all knew what I knew, and
yeah,
and it would be an easier experience or a more purposeful experience, I suppose. What
yeah.
advice?
Don't let the word hospice scare you. Hospice has changed dramatically. I was doing a little bit of research before I came on tonight with you, and hospice started here in the United States, and I think it was 1967 over in Connecticut, is what I found. And when hospice first started so many years ago, it was kind of a deathbed thing that was going to happen. Hospice has changed so dramatically that we come in and it's not unusual for us to see our patients start to thrive and start to get better because they're getting more one-on-one attention. And so don't let hospice scare you. We are there to help you. You have your chaplain that comes in, you have your social worker that comes in, that's a part of the team. You have your hospice, your home health aides that come in and help with bathing, hygiene, changing out bed sheets and things like that. And they have a way of, let's say you may have a bedbound patient, they have a way of being able to do that, and changing bed sheets and stuff without disrupting anything, to where a normal person at home would have a very difficult time doing that. And
Right.
then, of course, you get your nurses that come in and spend some time with you, 2 to 3 times a week. And so we have a wealth of people that can come in and make your life easier. But it is overwhelming because Medicare demands the first 5 days that all of us show up. And all of a sudden, you go from not having anybody in your house to you have 4, 5, 6, 7 different strangers showing up to your house. And so I understand how difficult that is, but just know that we're there to help, and we're there to make your life easier as a caregiver.
Right.
Um, we've never had anybody tell us, and I wish I wouldn't have gotten hospice right now. They've
Right.
all just been praising of getting us in
Well,
sooner
I
rather
was
than
going to
later.
say, I know tens of thousands of people. Okay. I have never heard anyone say nothing, but these people are miracle workers as far as what they provided for me and my family at such a difficult time. So I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when you're getting something from the government, Medicare, you have to jump through the hoops. I mean, I've learned that so far in all of this rigmarole. So I understand that because hospice is paid for by Medicare, I assume.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, it is a Medicare benefit. Yeah.
Well, are there any stories you would like to leave my audience with that just, so many things have brought tears to my eyes just with you talking, but I'm sure you've seen that transition uh,
Mhm.
so many times to some place far better.
Yeah. Yeah. The best stories are the ones that when the patient there at the very end starts to reach out for something, and they're reaching, and I believe they're reaching for God. I believe they're reaching for that person that they may be seeing that we can't see. But I just had one that happened about 6 weeks ago. And as she took her final breath, she put the biggest smile on her face. And you talking about bringing tears to your eyes, because you just like, what did she just see? And so those are some of the better ones that we get to know and we get to experience. Um, we become part of the family pretty quick with a lot of these families. And even though we may only be with them a week or so, and they make us feel part of their family, and it's just a blessing to be a part of them. But as far as other stories go, um, man, I mean, we had one patient that was very young, and the parents were struggling because they lost another daughter as well. Um, and just to be there, to be with them, and to see them being able to finally release and have a peace. Um, that's the goal, is to bring a peace and a comfort to the room. That's the goal for us. And so whenever we can do that, we feel like it's a win for us.
Well, like I said, I love your life mission, helping people take their next step towards Jesus. And in hospice, it's become helping people take their last step towards Jesus. That
Yeah.
is beautiful.
Yeah.
And you have done an incredible job of educating us as an audience tonight on just one more aspect of hospice, and that's the role of the chaplain. And so we thank you so very, very much, Jason,
Thank
for
you.
sharing your experiences. And I guess I have one last question for you, because I know this has to be hard. How do you not bring it home?
You, I fail. I fail epically at that. And it's hard because Heidi, we work together. And so she wants to know a little bit more in depth about some of the people and some of the stories that are going on. I don't do a very good job in taking care of myself with this. I see a counselor
Okay.
who helps me get through it. I see her, on a pretty regular basis. And so, and then I spend a lot of time in prayer, and just trying to release some of this stuff, because some of them are tough. And like I said, we get close to some of our patients, and those are the really hard ones. We just lost a friend of ours this last week who was on our services. And so it's just, it's just hard. That's where Heidi's at tonight. And so
Wow.
it just makes it difficult.
Well, but thank you for your transparency. I think
Yeah.
just the fact that you said, I see a therapist because this is hard.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine because Heidi is the bereavement coordinator, and
Right.
so it's not like one of you have a different job and a different life. You both now have the same life in some respects. Well, we're so grateful that there are people like you.
Oh, thanks.
That's all I've got to say is thank you. Thank you for being that person who is willing to do that and do it with such excellence. And what a blessing you have been to so many people that we don't know, but you have been a blessing to all the people who have watched this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Linda.
All right. Thank you all for joining our episode number 45. And you can catch the other episodes in this series, which was number 26, 27, 28, 43, and 44. So be sure to check that all out. And if you haven't signed up at lindatoupin.com, please head on over and do that. Thank you all so much.